Our guest today is actor Ben Davies, who has landed the lead role in 20 feature films and counting. Now, in high school, he was a six-time All-American and held a national gold medal in both the Decathlon and the Javelin. But after an athletic injury sidelined him in college, he got the call to audition for Sherwood Pictures' highly successful film, Courageous. Now, Ben booked the co-starring role of David Thomson and won the Light in Hollywood Award for that performance. And Ben also appeared in another highly successful film, War Room, starring Karen Abercrombie. Now, Ben definitely has the Lord's guiding hand upon him, and today he is starring in this season's new Christmas movie, Jingle Smells, along with an all-star cast with John Schneider and Eric Roberts, Jim Breuer and Victoria Jackson, just to name a few. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome one of the hardest working actors in Hollywood, Ben Davies, to the show. Welcome, Ben.
Dude, what an intro. I'm really impressed with all the knowledge and research you guys brought out. I feel like I don't even have to say anything else. I wish you could just follow me around and announce me whenever I walk into rooms like that.
Well, one of your co-stars in the film Jingle Smells, Jim Breuer, told me that after I introduced him, he said, "Dude, you could have just stopped at my name."
Yeah. Oh, no, I want you to keep going. We got 20 minutes, man. What else you got?
I know it, but I've got to ask you, so how long have you been acting?
Well, my mom likes to say that I started acting while I was still in diapers because on a technicality, I booked a commercial when I was a toddler where my sole acting job in that shoot was to hold a red balloon and give it back. But that's when she said she knew that I had what it took to take direction. And so that's really but I did like commercials and music videos through high school. And I auditioned for a couple different roles in when Nashville, the show was being shot in Nashville, a few things like that, and Army Wives. But I never quite got through the door. I was very close on a few things. And then while I was in college, like you mentioned, I was doing track and field and I had this horrific injury and it gave me 6 months to kill where my coaches finally didn't care what I was doing. And during that period, I snuck off and trained acting for a while so I could audition for the Kidner Brothers film. And I did the audition for David Thomson in a sling. And I remember there being like, hey, this is a cop movie and you're going to have to fight people and shoot. Are you going to be okay? And I was like, well, if the Lord wants me to have this role, this will be fine. And thankfully it was.
So you snuck off to take acting lessons?
Well, you always want to sharpen your craft. It's like a lot of people when they message me about, hey, how do I get in acting? I was like, have you got an acting coach? Have you been practicing to do any of this stuff yet? That's usually the first step. And so I had a lot of the training growing up, like I said, when I was auditioning for these different roles. And my mom owned a talent agency. So by default, every summer she'd hire people to come in and train her students. And so I would join those classes. So I had a nice base, but I knew if I wanted to actually make it to the next level, I needed to train specifically for this role. So I met with an acting coach in Nashville and worked with him for a few weeks and then did the audition that way.
So was it a surprise to you that you actually got a call to audition for the role in Courageous?
Yeah, because, all coincidence is just art, but none of these. I mean, like as soon as I had the injury, I was like, all right, Lord, like, what am I going to do? And then of course, like that's when I get this audition. I'm like, oh, okay, I guess there is some reasoning behind this, problem that I have currently. So I wasn't necessarily surprised. I had heard of the company before. I had seen Facing the Giants. I'm a Christian male who's into sports. So by default, you have to watch the death crawl scene from Facing the Giants, So I knew who the guys were. And I was just excited that it lined up where I just come out of, I think it was the day after surgery almost. like, hey, we're going to have you audition for this thing in, a few weeks. So, I was pleasantly surprised. I'll say that.
Well, before the injury, was your athletic career, if it's track and field, were you leaning more towards going after the Olympics?
Yeah, that's the end goal for any track and field athlete because I would never advise my kids if you're going to play the odds to be a professional athlete. In football, you can just be one of 60 on one of the 32 teams and you're fine. But in track and field, you have one shot every 4 years and you have to be one of the top 3 in the entire country versus like just making some squad and having a terrific time playing a game. So I knew it was kind of stacked up against me. However, I've been blessed to have a really great high school career. At the time, I was the best American decathlete ever, and which is how I was able to go to Florida. When Tim Tebow was there and we won the national title, it was awesome. But one of the things with that is just so competitive, and every time I got hurt, people caught up, and every time I got hurt, people got better while I was trying to get back to where I was. And it was just never, I found out that, the Lord was just shutting a door to open another one. And I was able to fortunately, work on that and then walk through that door when the opportunity presented itself.
Well, have all of your roles been in faith-based films?
No, I've done a couple romantic comedies. One of the ones that is kind of near and dear to me is The Matchbreaker, which was with Christina Grimmie before she was tragically killed a few years ago. And it was her first acting role, and it was a romantic comedy that was done by some independent friends of mine. And it actually did extremely well, and it ended up being featured on Netflix even before everything happened with Christina. So I like that one a lot. It's a fun one. And then The Griddle House with Luke Perry before he passed. A few other ones like that. But what's great about, I enjoy doing both. But the thing with the Christian ones is because you really believe in what you're doing, and hopefully people on set even are there not just to get a paycheck, but because they really believe in the mission and what we're talking about. And it doesn't happen on every set, but I like the idea of when Christians are pouring into a project, they hold themselves to an even higher standard than in the secular world. Like I would hope that, and this happens with some people that I've worked with for sure, like the Kennedy brothers, for example. Like everything is just, they care so much because they know how much it means. So yeah, it's great to see that, and I probably enjoy being on Christian sets more, but I've had a terrific time on both.
Well, that was going to ask you. I mean, what is the vibe feeling between a secular movie set versus a faith-based movie set?
Depends on it depends on which one it is. But they're all fun, and you're basically at summer camp for a while, if you're, it's just like you have this extraordinary situation that a bunch of really talented people are thrust into. And so there's like tensions are high, the comedy's high, the fun is high, the lows are low. It's just like everything is so extreme on a movie set. It's hard to find that kind of situation anywhere else. I mean, it's pretty wild. If you talk to anyone that's been on film sets, just like how different that world is each time you do it. So, I mean, there's things that cross over in both. There's not a ton of difference unless, the people at the helm are making a specific effort to do what they can for the kingdom and making sure everything is done the proper way. So there's sometimes there's this crossover, like that some of it can be similar, some maybe not so much.
Well, was there any particular role that you've had in the past that was a little difficult for you?
Yeah, I'd say honestly. So Jingle Smells was probably the most difficult task for me as an actor because of the restraints that we had. We were trying to break into right now making any film with the economy the way that it is, and the bars to entry being as high as they are, and everything you're going to deal with from a legal perspective. I mean, it's so difficult. So one of the things we needed to do was they needed to shrink down the shoot time. So we only had a certain amount of windows to shoot this feature-length movie, and this was the most lines that I've ever had in a film. Even as a lead, I had many scenes that I had to work through, like Cream of the Crop last summer, which was fantastic, and then this Jingle Smells but this was the most like dialogue per film that I'd ever done. And we just had our fourth child, and then Logan Succulo calls me up and he's like, "Hey, can you do these dates?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I think so." So I was, getting no sleep, and then like working on these scenes for like weeks and weeks and weeks, and it's a 115-page script, and you're on like every other page. So I just had to burn all these lines, like work on these lines, and it was very, very difficult. It was very hard for me to get done. And then the shoot schedule was very tight, and we were shooting a Christmas movie at the end of basically August in New Mexico. So it's 120 degrees, and you're wearing sweatshirts, and like everything's sticking to you. And every time you go outside, it's just like a furnace. And so it was very difficult. It was very difficult circumstances to shoot in, and it was so tight. We had to make sure like everyone was just on their lines the whole time. Unfortunately, the crew was great. The cast was great, and we were able to overcome all those obstacles, all those difficulties of dealing with the heat and the pressure and the time constraints. So I was really happy we pulled this movie out, and I'm really happy with the end product. And it was definitely one of the more difficult roles I had to play.
Well, why in the world did y'all film in New Mexico? Couldn't you just filmed in a northern state in August and kind of make it a little bit easier instead of sweating through all of the Christmas sweaters?
I think they just like a challenge. You know, they wanted to make sure we really earned it at the end of it. I mean, there's just different tax incentives in different states, and a lot of the crew happened to be from Albuquerque, and they already done a lot of location scouting, and it looks gorgeous. I mean, you see the movie; it's fantastic that they were able to pull off what they did there, and I guess it's a lot less crowded getting from set to set. It's not as difficult, and there's not as much traffic. So there was a lot of perks in being in New Mexico, and one of the perks is that we were able to do the movie.
Yeah, and even when I watched it, I was trying to think, where did they film this movie at? Because I couldn't actually place the location because the location was almost generic enough where it could have been in any town in America.
Yeah, and that's just the magic of movie making. You know, you have a couple establishing shots that you get probably from a stock company, or maybe Logan or Daniel went somewhere and shot a few of the outdoor churches or a few of these random dining establishments where there's snow, and then all of a sudden you feel like you're there, and you just like jump into this like hot box where we were actually filming, and then you could continue the
Well,
scenes that way.
I mean, the movie has this all-star cast. I mean, it's John Schneider, it's Eric Roberts and Jim Breuer and Victoria Jackson. I mean, the list goes on. Was there any particular fellow actor that maybe you received some advice from?
Yeah, I actually enjoyed talking to Eric Roberts the most, which if you've heard anyone like, talk about film sets, one of the things is certain people are very busy and they're in very high demand and they need to get in and get out, and they've also been on major studio films most of their life and have been in the industry for years. And sometimes, not always, those people are a little more difficult to have a relationship with on set for many pretty good reasons. And so I was really interested to see how I could talk to Eric, because he had a terrific role in my favorite movie of all time. Not the best film of all time, but like the movie that I enjoy rewatching the most every year is The Dark Knight. And so I sat down with Eric and I was like, "Hey, dude, you gotta tell me about this. That it's my favorite movie of all time. I mean, like, watch it once a year with a group of friends, and your performance was terrific. Like, can you tell me anything about the movie?" And he was spilling some fantastic tea on the movie, working with certain actors. And I'm not going to give away all of his stories, but the tea that he spilled was fantastic. And so I had a terrific time getting to talk to him about film, the process, other projects, and it was really fun to work with him.
What I found a little bit strange was that Eric Roberts is in this Christmas movie, and here is a guy that's been filming the seasons of the Righteous Gemstones. So I thought it was kind of funny that he'd been in that series and now he's in this movie, because there's a little bit, I wouldn't say it's a strong faith-based type Christmas movie. It's a great feel-good comedy Christmas movie, because that's how I looked at it, because it's made for the whole family.
Mm-hmm.
But when I saw Eric Roberts there, because I always loved watching him in the series Suits. And like you said, yeah, he's very well known for The Dark Knight. Did you learn anything else from any of the cast members?
I'm trying to think of a specific lesson or story. I don't want to give away too many secrets from people that might have been telling me things in confidence. So I
Oh,
don't feel
sure.
confident jumping into those stories. But yeah, it's true. It's true about the movie because it is made to entertain people at its core, which is Hollywood's not been able to do for the longest time because of the constraints of woke liberal nonsense that is just completely infested and destroyed half this country. That you can't make a good comedy anymore. Like, I mean, now, I mean, you have to be an independent streaming service to make a good comedy and not have to have the restraints of like, I'm going to cast a bisexual lesbian like immigrant as the lead just because, or something like that. It's like, so we were able to make a great Christmas movie that doesn't focus on politics, doesn't focus on these different things, and there's elements sprinkled around there, but like hopefully kids can enjoy it. I watched it with my kids, and I felt totally confident letting my 5, 3, 2, and newborn sit there and watch this movie. And if you're an adult, you can kick back and actually enjoy yourself for an hour and a half instead of being lectured about how much you are, how awful of a person you are or something. So I was really happy with how we were able to balance all those sides. And then there, like you said, there are Christian elements. Specifically, there's a scene that takes place in a church, which is, usually tips your hat that's at least a slightly more conservative movie. And I had a really enjoyable scene there. So hopefully everyone takes
Well,
something away from me.
that's actually my favorite scene in the whole movie is the church scene with you and one of the other cast members. Um, I thought it was the highlight of the whole film.
No, I really appreciate that because that was a great experience for me just because of previous project that I had done. Actually, I shot a film a few years back called "I'm Not Ashamed," which was the story of Rachel Joy Scott when she was the first person killed at the Columbine massacre. And my character was a real person who I actually met, and the story is told through their journals that they actually kept. Like I actually had the journals, and we gave them the writer, and almost all my dialogue is directly taken from these words that he said. And so I got to read the scripts. I read his journal that he shared with her, and I read the script. And then I was working through these scenes, and I had this big scene at the end of the movie where I had to deliver a eulogy, basically. And I asked the lead actress, I was like, "Hey, I got the scene tomorrow. Can you do me a favor? Can you call me and leave me a voice message? And as Rachel, as like the girl, and just leave a voice message as if it was the last thing you wanted him to know before you passed, basically." And then so I hung up the phone. She called, let it ring through, and I went to sleep. Woke up the next day, and before I went to the scene, I listened to her voicemail, and it just like rocked me to my core. And so I saved that voicemail, and I saved it for specific scenes where I think it's called for. And so in this moment, my character is very, very broken. He's reaching out for anything, like a lifeline. And so I sat there, and I was like, Daniel's the director, and I was like, "Hey, I think we got like one shot at this. So is there any way you could set like 2 or 3 cameras? Because I don't think I could do this twice." And he was like, "Yeah, okay, we'll do it this way." I was like, "Yeah, let's do the tight first and then go to the wide." And you don't want to. And so I listened to the voicemail and then went through the whole scene. And I think it was just all one take of that sequence, and then they moved to the wide shots. So I'm really glad that it came through on camera like I wanted it to, and that people enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was to me. It was still the best scene in the whole movie. And for you, how does your faith guide you in auditioning for roles, as well as portraying the different characters that you've played?
I just pray for help that I'm able to pull this off in a godly way, and also that it'd not just be me. It would not just be my own ability or skill because it's very, very limited. It'd just be that there's great moments that are found in the edit and the process, and that God helps me through the movie. I had to do a lot of prayer, like, "Oh, this is going to be really tough." Like that's I think that's where I lean on God the most, just to help me to do a good job.
Well, I mean, have you ever had a particular scene where you saw the Lord take your ability to a new level?
It's a really good question, actually. Because when you're in those scenes, it's so chaotic when you're on a film set because there's 100 people stressed out. They're all doing their job as hard as they can, and then everything's being set up, and then they call action, and everything's kind of quiet. Like it's just you and the person. So, and that already takes you to kind of a surreal place where you're supposed to be trying to pretend like you're that person and do these different scenes. And gosh, I know I've had those feelings where I'm like, wow, that was like really cool moment. I think a lot of that happens too when there's organic things that happen in the scenes. Like if for the audience that doesn't know, like there's things you're supposed to say that are on the script, but then there's all this white space where it just says they take a moment together. And like, what does that mean? Like it could be a million things. You don't know what the people are going to do. Or people just make up lines and then hopefully you find something there. And that's happened on a couple of sets, probably specifically I'm Not Ashamed, which was a really powerful film and project where we had a lot of leeway on that one. I think there was a scene that was actually cut with me and Rachel, and we had a moment where my character was going to she almost like committed suicide. My character was like really worried about her. And we had this really great moment where we met each other and we did this kind of like improv thing, and it was really special. It didn't quite make the cut because they had to cut some stuff out because it added to the movie, but it wasn't essential for telling the story. And I think that's probably the one that stands out the most. So I had to pick one.
I was talking to Jim Breuer about Jingle Smells, and he was telling me that he really loved being on the set of this movie because all of you were giving a lot of leeway when it came to the script. Does that make the acting easier?
It does. It puts a lot less pressure on the situations. Sometimes it's harder because of the time constraints. Like sometimes if you're doing a scene, you're literally listening for the one line where like I'm supposed to talk, but it's like, what if that person was going to add something else, or if he was going to do something, you don't want to step on him or her. and ruin that take. So it's a lot of trust, and it's kind of a dance that you have to go through with people. And so I like a lot of the organic stuff, especially when it's a one-on-one scene. It gets a lot more complicated when you have like two or three, like a dinner scene, for example, or the scene at the end of the movie. Everyone has to like know your timing, know when to jump in, because there's all of us are trying to know like when we're supposed to jump in and say our line. So it can be really helpful. I think especially for them, since they were doing the kind of like the broadcast stuff, like it'd be much easier to just riff and like whatever's going to happen happens.
Well, do you have an all-time favorite Christmas movie that you like to watch every year?
Yeah, Jingle All the Way with Arnold Schwarzenegger is probably the best one of all time, like the Turbo Man one. My dad still has the VHS, and he tries to play it through that every year for Christmas. I don't know how that ended up being the top of the Davies household, but now it's actually it's probably one of the last like kind of politically correct ones too that they were able to do. This is like early 2000s, but yeah, Jingle All the Way with Arnold Schwarzenegger has got to be top tier.
And that's the one with Sinbad in it, right?
Yeah, it was Sinbad.
Man, I don't even remember the last time I've seen that movie. And even on cable, I don't see it pop up on the guide that often.
Yeah, I know. There might be a reason for that.
Everybody wants to talk about Elf or Miracle on 34th Street, and I don't know. There's so many of them out there. But ladies and gentlemen, you got to check out Jingle Smells. That's available now. I think you can actually watch it immediately online. Don't you? Is it jinglesmells.com?
Yeah, I believe so. You'll be able to search it, find it. It's be available there, and then think that you're going to be switching off different. Be checking as this video comes out too, because I think they're switching different streaming platforms as people get more rights to the film, that sort of thing. So, but if you just look up Google Jingle Smells streaming, you'll figure out how to watch it, and hopefully it'll be everyone's top tier. That'll just beat out Jingle All the Way with Arnold Schwarzenegger. So it'll be me in the trash outfit, and then Arnold Schwarzenegger as a superhero. And that'll be everyone's top films going forward.
That's it. And then everybody will be begging to see Jingle Smells every year, right?
Exactly.
Well, I've got to ask you, Ben, I understand that you are a producer at the Daily Wire. What do you do there?
I produce the Michael Knowles show. So me and him, we just wrapped the show today. And I also get to host one of our competition shows, Face Off. I write all the questions for Yes or No, the popular game now series of the Daily Wire. And we also launched different series like Cross the Picket Line, where I get to find people for Michael, and you get to follow me through the crowd, finding people to sit down with him after a protest speech. And then the Michael Land series, which is crowning one of our favorite shows that Michael and I enjoy to produce, where we interview fantastic people from around the world with incredible testimonies. And one in particular that has been popular is Michael sitting down with an exorcist. So be sure to check that one out. It's very fun. And anywhere Daily Wire, any Daily Wire stuff, you'll see me kind of around that.
Well, how did you land that gig?
One of my friends in Los Angeles went on a Hinge date, an online date with somebody that was an assistant at the Daily Wire, and they got to talking. They knew the date wasn't going to move forward, but they still wanted to have a conversation, and it brought up the Daily Wire, and he was like, "Oh my goodness, you guys got to talk to Ben Davies, this great Christian actor, and he also does commentary for the Rebel Media, and like he'd be great for you guys." So then I just like bumbled in there and met with Jeremy, and I was like, "Hey, there's a lot of people that are probably more experienced with credentials and went to college for this kind of stuff, but I'm a dude that makes content, and I feel like I've got a really good perspective." And then he was like, enough said, and hired me there. So I've been producing the Michael Knowles show for about 3 years now.
Well, that's a pretty good job to have in between doing all the films.
Yeah, exactly. And they've been what's great about the Daily Wire guys, it's such a terrific community of people that we have very similar interests and very like-minded, but there's also a lot of diversity and leeway where, they won't tell me to make something. All the other series I just mentioned, no one told me to do that. I just was like, "Hey, I got this idea." And they're like, "Yeah, go for it." And the same thing with the films. They're really good about letting me take time off to do films. And I hope that we continue to make more like Jingle Smells.
Well, so what's coming up for you in 2024?
There's a movie we're working on right now. I don't know if I can actually give much information on it, but it's very cool. Hopefully it happens like early 2024. It's awesome. There's also American Miracle with pretty much everyone in the conservative media you would know, Cameron Arnett and Abercrombie and Kevin Sorbo, and just everybody's in this movie. And it's us telling the miracles of America's founding that no one talks about. because all you hear about is that we were a bunch of like slave owners that tried to like have more slaves, and that's why we wanted to come to America or some nonsense. So we're just telling all the real American stories to show the absolute miracle that we have this country and why we should preserve it, and what a Christian covenant is that was founded on. So that movie should be coming out sometime next year.
Wow. Well, that one I really can't wait to watch. So when it does debut, hopefully you and some of the cast members will come on and we can definitely talk about that film.
Yeah, it'd be great. I always like talking about American history.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, hey, Ben Davies, lead role in the brand new Christmas movie, the heartwarming and funny Christmas movie Jingle Smells is available right now. It's available on streaming. Just go to Google or DuckDuckGo and type in Jingle Smells movie, and it'll guide you exactly where you need to go to watch the film. And it is family friendly and has a great message as well. And like I said before, Ben, the church scene is my favorite scene in that whole movie. It was the crowning scene for that whole film, and all-star cast, ladies and gentlemen: Ben Davies, John Schneider, Jim Breuer, Victoria Jackson, even Eric Roberts, and so many more. When you watch the film, you're going to recognize some of the best top talent in Hollywood, but it's a great film all the way around, especially this holiday season. And hey, Ben, I want to thank you so much for coming on and sharing your acting background as well as the new Christmas movie with us today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, man. I really appreciate it.
Hey, you bet. And ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for watching and listening. You can catch all of the replays both on YouTube at the Dr. Ward Bond Show, as well as nationwide on the Dr. Ward Bond Show on CTN. We air Monday through Friday, 12 noon Eastern on Direct and Dish, as well as many cable markets around the country. And you will also be able to see my interview with Ben on my brand new YouTube channel, Bond on Cinema, which is really a brand new YouTube channel for about, well, interviews with filmmakers, for filmmakers, when we do interviews with top directors, producers, screenwriters, and actors, and so much more. So again, that's Bond on Cinema on YouTube. Check that out. And we're also available on over a dozen digital platforms. And as for me and Ben, catch Jingle Smells, the movie, this Christmas holiday season. And as for me, I'll see you next time.